It is Talking Pints. Yes, my favourite part, not just of the programme, but of the day, to be absolutely honest with you. Well, of course, I'm joined in the studio with someone today very well known to many who love radio, love television, love Pop Idol and all of those things. Before I introduce our guest, here he is reacting to Will Young's audition performing Blame It on the Boogie back in 2001.
You don't blame it on the sunshine. You don't blame it on the moonlight. You don't blame it on the good time. Blame it on the boogie, yeah. To blame it on the sunshine, whoo. Blame it on the moonlight. You don't blame it on the good time, yeah. Blame it on the boogie.
Yeah, I thought it was, the word I wrote down was a little bit cheesy. But I mean, that's the song and perhaps the performance, and you did dance like you got a couple of packs of Gorgonzola strapped around your kneecaps. But it was... It was a pleasant cheddar rather than a stinky Stilton. So it was good cheese. I'm sorry.
No, did it? I was trying to work out. It got it in.
No, it was good cheddar. It was not stinky Stilton. It was fine.
Very nice indeed.
Stinky Stilton, Neil Fox.
Cheers.
Welcome to Talking Pints.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. And on that clip, because we had Pete Waterman, who we also had sitting in that chair.
I saw him. This was a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
I didn't realise what a railway enthusiast.
I mean, he is the world's greatest railway anorak. And to be fair, has amassed a big fortune and spent a lot of it on railways as well. That's his thing. He loves it.
It was extraordinary. Now, what do I call you? I was sort of teasing before.
Just call me
You were
Neil.
Dr. Fox when you were at Capital, I think.
I was. Yeah.
And yet, when Capital was really kind of the big challenger to Radio 1, and there wasn't the mass. You know, we didn't have Heart and all these other...
We didn't indeed.
It was sort of quite radical stuff that was happening. I guess Capital was a pretty exciting place to be, wasn't it?
Capital, I mean, in the late 80s, early, and all through the 90s, was a wonderful place. I guess, yeah, radio was a very different place in many respects. The whole broadcasting landscape has changed totally. Technology's changed a lot of things, but they were great. You know, with Tarrant and Co. and some legendary DJs, we had a lot of fun.
I'll tell you what hasn't changed in DJing. Tony Blackburn.
Well, no, he sounds just the same. He's got that same energy.
The jokes, they're terrible.
They are. But he's still really good at what he does. God knows how old he is now, but he really is a legend.
All of which begs the question, what do you think makes a good DJ? What makes, I mean... Because it's kind of, you know, I've done radio before I did telly, and different. It was talk radio as opposed to music and entertainment. But isn't that relationship that the listener builds with the presenter? It's a very close relationship, isn't it?
It is. I suppose it depends what makes a good DJ. OK, if we're talking music radio, which I've done all my life, you know, people, I think, choose radio stations because they have a kind of personality of their own. So whether you like Capital or Heart or Kiss or classical or whatever, it's because you feel comfortable with the kind of music they play, but the feel they have as well. Because it is... You invite them into your home or your car or your shower or your bedroom, you know, every day. They're part of you. So we were often deemed friends on the radio. So you had to be deemed that kind of person that people want to have as their friend, I guess. But, you know, interesting, informative, educational. There's lots of different sort of, I suppose, types of DJ. Same with the talk radio. You've just got to be interesting, haven't you? You've got to engage people.
Yeah, you know, one of the most interesting comments I ever heard on radio came from the late great Sir Terry Wogan,
right?
Who was a brilliant broadcaster.
Genius.
I mean, and he was asked a question many years ago about the size of his audience, because Radio 2, massive audience. He was asked a question about how many listeners he had, and he answered it by saying, "No, I've only got one listener." But to me, as a broadcaster, I'm talking. You know, I want you to feel.
Very much
that I'm talking to you as a person. And is that, I want to, maybe that's the trick of it, really.
Yeah, if you ever hear a broadcaster go, "Hi everyone," and all of you out there, you've lost me immediately, because you feel, no, genuinely, because it is that one-to-one thing that you want to feel at any one time that they're talking to me. And I very much know that. I love radio. I've always liked radio, and I still listen to radio all the time. Under 30s don't listen to music radio at all now. I think radio's losing.
Well, this was my next question.
Because that's tech, you know. So I've got 3 kids, 15, 19 and nearly 21. They don't listen to radio, apart from when Dad's on, and I kind of make them. No, but over in the car, because it's a habit. I play the radio in the car. But after a time, if we're on a journey, they'll go, "Can I stick the Spotify playlist on?" Because they go, "Why would I want to hear someone else's choices of songs, when I can't affect it, they're not particularly interesting or funny. A lot of music radio doesn't have a lot of chat on it now. It doesn't have a lot of entertainment. It's mainly music. In a way, because they're trying to compete with Spotify and Apple and Amazon and the streaming platforms.
Yeah. I want to come back to that, but I remember I'm a few weeks younger than you. So I remember, Sunday evening, you're waiting for what is going to be number one.
Yep.
And, people would go out and buy records and you'd follow that record in the charts, and there was no internet or anything like that, but there were music newspapers. The charts were a major part, weren't they?
They were. But of course it was the way you got music, right? So you could only listen to it on the radio, or you went to buy it. So when you're a kid and you didn't have much money, you couldn't buy a lot of records. You'd buy maybe one or two a week, if that. So that the chart was the way you could hear the 40 biggest songs. Yes. And people would sit there with their play and record on their cassette recorders, and then some bugger like me would come along and I'd start talking, and they'd be, oh no, I missed it, right? So they have a cassette with someone on it and just a little bit of me at the beginning and a little bit of me at the end, or other jocks, and then that's how you got your songs. So it was a big part, and who would be number one? We didn't know. There were no real predictions at that time. You know now on a Monday who's going to be number one.
It didn't sort of leak so much, did it, either?
It didn't, but it was harder because it was all done, it wasn't done digitally. As soon as things are done digitally, it's so much easier to count and get that instant information. So, we're not so excited about charts now, although I think people are.
Does number one matter in the way that it did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
It does to an artist, it does to a record company. I do think that modern music radio has slightly lost a trick by not making the charts big and exciting, because people still love a countdown. They really do. People love a countdown. You start at X number and you know you're going to end up at number one. And there's always something interesting who's going to be number one this week.
And there are more charts these days,
Well, there are. And I'm sure this week, hey, what's been the big news? Eurovision, we finally did well. It's actually a really good song. He's got a great voice. I'm sure Sam Ryder will be number one with Spaceman. And good.
But we've also got other charts, and we've got heritage music and all of these things.
It's all out there. It is. And I suppose that the brilliant thing with technology, it's allowed different people of different ages to find the music they love and get excited by it and enjoy it all over again. And to be fair, pretty much anyone now in this country who's alive has grown up with rock and roll. If you think back in the 50s, so that was 70 years ago, they've grown up. So if you're 90 now, you were 20 when Elvis was around. Everyone's been around with rock and roll. So kids always tend to think that the parents are old and boring, but we've all grown up with pop music at some time, whatever it may be.
So as you say, younger people choose their playlists and all the rest of it, is the traditional music radio that's been the mainstay of your career, is it for the bin, ultimately?
I think if they're not careful, they'll manage decline, rather like print did 20 years ago, just because that new, younger audience isn't coming up and going through. People who have grown up with pop radio will always love radio because it's been part of our lives. I get in the car, I turn the radio on.
And for you, of course, telly as well, Pop Idol, Mega, Simon Cowell sitting there looking incredibly young.
Looking very young, actually.
But in a way, for you, your fame...
Yep.
And you're not the only person in your position, led to you going through a very, very tough time, some quite serious accusations, sexual allegations made against you.
Yep.
Going through the whole mill of that, but coming out.
It was a very hard time, and actually a very interesting period of the history of our country, actually, what happened with the police probably during 2012 for a few years, 5 years after that. In fact, Channel 4 are making a programme about that period and kind of what happened to try and put it all into some kind of perspective. But, if you go through, you've been through the mill over various things in your life, you either kind of sit there and whinge and moan about it, or you have to go, right, let's crack on. I don't want that to, I guess... that's not going to be the thing that defines my life, hopefully.
But at the time...
it's shocking. It's dreadful.
When you're being accused of these kind of things.
It's awful, and you've got to go through it. And of course, it's not just you who goes through these things. It's my family and my kids at school and my wife and my wider family. So it's a very hard time, of course, but then, you punch through it and you crack on.
And Cliff Richard was a friend and supporter and helper during this period?
Well, yeah, I'd met Cliff a few times, but obviously he was going through his battles, and so was Paul Gambaccini, comedian, we did actually sort of really get to know each other during that whole.
But there were some bad guys, weren't there? There was a famous Radio 1 DJ called Savile.
Oh my God!
So there were some horrors out there.
There were some absolute horrors, and that's kind of in a way what really kicked all this off. I'm sure.
Yeah.
When you look back historically at what happened there.
Yeah. Now, television, radio, an entertainer. You know, Dr. Fox, as I still know you, not Foxy or Neil, but interestingly, you know, you've not said a lot over the years about current affairs, about the state of the world. You've been quite cautious, I guess. I
think if you're a broadcaster, you have to be careful because we stick to what we know, which is music and entertainment. So does someone want to hear me talking about politics? But of course, politics affects me. And here we are with this magnificent backdrop of where it all happens over there.
We have the Palace of Westminster behind us. And by the way, this isn't being recorded. We're just having a beer, right?
Yeah, cheers.
So I think we need to get your take on the... This is Fox on the state of the nation. So where are we? Where are we?
Well, I think like lots of people, I am intrigued, frustrated, angry, but also fascinated by what happens over there and in politics. I do wonder, and we've talked about broadcasting and how technology's changed and how it's changed the way we receive information and how it can connect. I mean, look, social media can have many positive effects, it can have many negatives as well. But I do wonder whether, that building and the way it operates behind is fit for purpose anymore, and whether we haven't got to really start rethinking how modern politics exists in 2022 and beyond, because I kind of wonder who on earth would want to be a politician nowadays, because the world of Twitter and social media means that massively important topics are dealt with one word or one phrase. This is how we're dealt with. It's either crap, brilliant, fab, or whatever. It's a one-liner, or scum. You remember that, which Angela Rayner did. But but it all comes down to one line or one phrase, and you think things are way more complex than that. But the problem is that's how our world is operating at the moment, and things obviously need far more nuance. Things are rarely black and white; they're far more grey.
I mean, your skill as a broadcaster was connecting with millions of people.
Yep.
Who saw you as being relevant to them, their lives, who you were as a person. Do you think our politicians, when you look at the front benches, do you think these people connect with ordinary folk out there?
Well, I genuinely don't, no, and I think there's always part of the problem. When people say politics is boring, I mean, it isn't boring. I think what they probably mean is the people doing it don't seem to be anything like us, and you really do feel that it's a little bubble and a world where they don't really know their constituents. There are so many... I wonder whether we need to really look at in the future what kind of people become MPs.
Should we change the electoral system? Would that help?
Well, you do think is that still fit for purpose? Because the social media, the internet, allows people now to find other people who have the same views as them.
It's not just red or blue, is it, anymore?
No, it isn't anymore. You can find your tribe everywhere, except... when it comes down to elections, it's really, OK, is it Tory, is it Labour? Really, it still comes down to it. It's not quite as bad as it is in America. But you think things are far more nuanced than that. And if you were a Green, why don't you should be allowed to vote for a Green? And if there are 10% of people in Britain that are Green, maybe the whole idea of...
2015 UKIP leader, 4 million votes and one seat. So, and
Well, no, exactly. So
I've been through that. What about the House of Lords? How does that look to you?
There needs to be a system in place that somehow takes a check on what happens in the Commons. That's good.
Yeah.
I think the kind of people that they put in there need to be people that have been in business, more and more we know there are people who have got experience of life and careers and the real world that are ending up in there who are making those checks. I think we need more of those kind of people in the Commons as well.
We do. Yeah. And actually, with the two big parties dominating English politics completely, and England being 87% of the population of the UK.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they're choosing people who are safe.
Yes. What we need is people that actually speak their mind, but can bring something to the table, and have done real life. So they understand what it's like to be a nurse, a care worker, or run a business.
But people, certainly for the world of business, what they're put off by is the fact that nobody starts from nothing and builds a successful business career without a few hiccups.
Yeah, for sure.
Along the road, and it's that gets exposed, not just by media but by social media, repeated endlessly. Yeah, we're putting off really good people, I'm afraid, from entering British politics, and it's sad. Is it politics next for you, Neil Fox?
I think with my track record I'd be crucified, wouldn't I? But I mean, there lies the problem.
Yeah.
That if you have experience of life and you could bring something maybe to that house.
Yeah, but you were proven innocent of all of that.
No, for sure. But what I'm saying in general, I think just having been a broadcaster and a DJ and the stupid things that we've done on Pop Idol, people would give you a hard time for. They'd bring everything up.
I don't know. A chap who used to run The Apprentice in America became president. So you never know.
Crazier things can happen.
You never
right?
know.
Come on.
Look, thank you very much indeed for
That's a
joining me
pleasure.
on Talking
Cheers.
Pints. Great to have you.
Nice to meet
Thank you.